this. Let's go ahead and create a fictitious sales application with a tracking only account store. All right, so we'll just create an application, tell it to use tracking only account store. That way, when we're doing our birthright assignments, we can include an account and a group in the tracking only account store and give us some additional things to work with. All right. So for this one, we just got to follow along. Let's go ahead and log in. I'll show you where our applications are at. So up here under apps and authentication, we have a menu item called applications. We're going to click on it, and that'll bring up the applications. Now, all these applications that are in here right now are internal EmpowerID applications, because EmpowerID kind of manages and aggregates its various protected resources and such under application objects, so that we can kind of manage and kind of deal with those in a categorized fashion. So what we're going to do is we're going to click over here on the right for create application. I think I'm going to go ahead and look at that. No wonder it's so small. It was already down that way, so get back up where it belongs. That's better. All right. So let's see, create application up here. I'm going to click on that. All right. This is just going to be a general application. Not going to have any single sign-on or Azure components to it or anything like that. Just going to be a basic application. So we're going to name it what you want, but I'm just going to name mine Sales Management System, right? So we're going to pretend that we've got this sales management system that folks, that our sales reps and the folks in our sales departments and such need to get access to. All right, so just give it. Just fill in the necessary information here. Now, down here we have account store options. Here's where if we wanted to, if we already had created an account store for this application, we could select which one we want to see. Now let's see, we've got Active Directory domain, we got the Acme flat file connector that we created, we've got some others. But for our purposes, for this application, we're just going to create a tracking only account store. I'm just going to click on the button here that says create a tracking only account store. Right? Now, with any resource, any object that we create in EmpowerID, and we'll see this when we create roles, roles and accounts and groups and stuff like that, it wants to know where to save this particular resource, right? So resources in EmpowerID, for purposes of management and delegation, should belong, we need to save them, or they should have a reference point to some sort of location in the system, so that we can maybe delegate access to them if we want, or delegate administration to them based on the location that they're at. We're just going to select any location. Now, for this purpose, I'm going to go ahead and save it. There's a location down here, a parent location, where we save all of our other EmpowerID applications. So I'm just going to click on EmpowerID applications to tell it to save it there in that particular parent location, right? So select where we want it and hit save. Now, the nice thing about being able to save something in a particular location is if you want to, you can kind of segregate your application, segregate your other resources into a location structure so that you can then delegate that, certain, maybe certain departments have access to all the applications in this particular location. Maybe this particular administrative group has administrator rights to any of the applications or roles in this location. So you can delegate responsibility for management, for visibility and things like that based on the location where things are stored, right? So as you start looking at your organization, as you start looking at the resources that you're managing, your applications, your roles, things like that, you have the ability, if you want, to save them or to store them or give them reference points in various locations for purposes of delegated management. It's just an additional option that we have when we're dealing with our RBAC delegations. All right. Now we're going to go ahead and publish this in the IAM shop because we may want to request access to it through the IAM shop, right? Now the app authorization model. In this case, we're not going to do anything fancy with it. We're not going to have, app roles and app rights and authorization. So we're just going to say this is not a PBAC or an Azure application. This is just standard tracking only application that we want to do. So the rest of the things we'll just leave alone. We don't really care about the rest of those settings. They're not going to bother us, or we aren't going to use them. And then we're going to go ahead and tell it to add to cart. And then we'll go up here to our cart and we'll submit the cart. So a lot of the processes that we do in Empower ID when it comes to some of the creation, some of the generation, some of the configuration stuff, depending on the type of configuration it is, sometimes we utilize the shopping cart so that we can do a number of things together and then submit it all at once. So sometimes when you hit submit, it'll just go ahead and do it. Other times it may say, hey, I'm going to add it to the cart, so you can do something else, add it to the cart, and then submit it all together. We're just going to go ahead and click on the cart and submit. Come back and say, yep, you're okay. I created it for you. All right. It brings us back in case we wanted to create more. But we're done creating that. So now if I go back to my admin applications and directories account stores, look at our account stores. Should see down here, sales management system. So now I have an account store out there that corresponds to my application I created. All right. So now this account store will act like any other account store. Apart from the fact it doesn't connect to an external system, I can create users in it. I can create groups. I can put users into groups. I can treat it just like any other account store. It's just that it's going to be isolated and only available in Empower ID, right? It's just for reference. It basically is a reference point for a system that we may have external to Empower ID that we can't connect to, right? So that's all there is to creating that application. Now, there's the create application, or the application processing with Empower ID. We've got lots of different options. It gets much, much, much more complicated if you wanted to say create an Azure app that's going to be used for Azure authentication, for federation, things like that. So we've got those workflows onboard application, which is going to actually create an Azure app in Azure, set up all the SAML or the OAuth federation points with it and all that stuff. So we can do everything from very basic, just little apps by themselves, up to federated applications that can be used with app roles, app rights, everything else. So it's just a matter of, there's a whole other section that you can dig into for application management. And that's one of those advanced things that we're not going to get into this time. So now we have 3 account stores we can work with. All right. So now that we have all of our account stores, we have all of our options, we've got all of our accounts, our user accounts and stuff in there. Now it's time to move on to the next step in kind of the life cycle of implementing Empower ID, which is now we need to get the identities, the onboarding of identities.